Welcome everyone to our GOC this year in 2021 in some different manners in a virtual way. I'm very happy to have Professor Kumar here. He is Vice-Chancellor of the O.P. Jindal Global University, and he was appointed VC in 2009 at the age of 34 when the university was founded in 2009. He is professor of law, and I'm very happy to have him here. And welcome.
Hi, such a pleasure to be here.
All right. So maybe you can just start off by telling us who you are and give us a brief overview.
Sure. As you mentioned, my name is Raj Kumar. I'm the founding Vice-Chancellor of O.P. Jindal Global University. Jindal Global University is a relatively new private university, which is now 12 years old. This year has been particularly special. In fact, for the last 2 years, we've been ranked as India's #1 private university. We are a non-STEM, non-medicine university with strong emphasis on humanities, liberal arts, social sciences, and professional schools in law and architecture. And of course, I've been a regular participant and speaker in the GUC, and it has been a fascinating initiative. And very unfortunately, we need to do this virtually this year.
Yes, absolutely. As we just talked about, hopefully we can get back to normal in 2 years for the next GUC. But we'll do as good as it gets virtually. And so for me, interesting would be, especially since we're focused on climate change this year. I think you're on mute. There you are. There you go. And how far are topics of climate change and sustainability being discussed in India, in the broader society nowadays?
Well, in fact, it's not just now, but the issue of climate change and sustainability has been part of not only the civil society and intellectual agenda, but also it has been part of the public policy priorities of India. There has been widespread consensus politically with regard to the importance of it and that efforts need to be taken. But as it is the case, that issues relating to environment more generally, but climate change in particular, unlike the pandemic itself, where there is a immediate sense of urgency that was visible, unfortunately, that has not been the case with regard to issues surrounding climate change. I must say that sustainability is slowly becoming the pivot around which many policy discussions are happening, and that climate action is seen as an imperative and not an option. So I think in the future, as social media campaigns on environmental causes and environmental studies becomes a stronger subject as well at various levels of education, I think it will increase the awareness and the importance of it. I do believe that one of the things that the global pandemic has taught us is that we can't take, our societies and our lives, lightly. We need to take steps for impending disasters, and there is no doubt about the fact that climate change and environmental issues are going to pose one of the largest threats to humanity. And as we have learned from the pandemic, we shouldn't be waiting for a pandemic type situation to emerge.
Absolutely. So especially a big focus on thinking ahead of time and not waiting for the crisis to appear. As you said before, though, I mean, we're right in the midst of the climate crisis, actually. So we're already trying to find concepts to fight it right now. So especially concerning that topic, a question for me would be, since we're talking about our university council, where do you see the main task for universities in that climate fight?
So I strongly believe that universities have a very important role to play, but it is also equally important to understand that we should not make the mistake of those who are directly involved in policy and governance, particularly the government and government agencies and regulatory bodies, those who are probably involved in carbon emissions, including companies, corporations, businesses, institutions, courts, and other such bodies. They have a fundamental responsibility to address these issues in a more, let's say, direct and substantive manner. Having said that, climate crisis is one such issue that no institution and organization can be indifferent to. And universities have an integral role to mold the collective consciousness of humanity to inculcate sustainability in our way of life. I believe that promoting awareness and education on, in many ways, the ethics of environment, cutting across disciplines, including economics and social sciences and law and policy and built environment and the like, this becomes a very important part of responsibility of the university, because historically, universities have unfortunately been silos. What an individual school or a faculty or a department does, many a time they don't talk to each other. The implications of their work does not transcend disciplines. This is an opportunity for universities to reimagine themselves to be centers of innovation for both thought and action. It is also important for us to appreciate that environment is not just being a specific area of study, but it is a multi-dimensional meta field that requires a number of fields to come together to make a difference. So from our standpoint at O.P. Jindal Global University, last year we took a very significant step to establish a full-fledged school known as the Jindal School of Environment and Sustainability. It is a dedicated school in the discipline of environment in a multidisciplinary manner. The curricula are designed in a way that students not only study issues surrounding sustainability, but its interactions with social sciences, policy, governance, regulation, sociology, and economics. The idea was to bring a holistic approach towards environmental education. Of course, besides the school itself, all our schools, including the law school, the public policy school, the liberal arts school, the journalism school, even the banking and finance school and the business school, which are not hitherto seen to be advancing the cause of environment, have come together to recognizing the importance of environment and climate change. And that is why I believe universities have a very significant role to play, both in terms of thought leadership, teaching and building of awareness, and sensitization, including a more rigorous and nuanced understanding of the implications of climate change on the life and the future of humanity.
Wonderful, thank you. Just a short follow-up. What do you think universities need to fulfill this task you're talking about, or this broader task of establishing multidiscipline studies, etc., but also on a broader scale? What kind of resources do you
So first of all, I think we need to promote what I call the mainstreaming of environmental studies across universities, in the sense university departments internally. For example, regardless of what discipline you are in, what school you are in, what faculty or department you are studying, what course, undergrad, postgrad, or whatever, you need to have courses that are specifically designed towards understanding the environment, the ecology, issues surrounding sustainability, including climate change. The second aspect is that universities should become centers of research, including knowledge creation and the more nuanced understanding of research. So this research should not only be in the more scientifically engaged STEM discipline-based study of environment, which I'm sure it's happening and should be happening, but also where things are really at the cutting edge when it comes to implementing policy. The more nuanced approach towards to what extent issues relating to environment and climate change matters in the lawmaking process, in the policy making process, to what extent businesses, corporations, business enterprises need to take into account the importance of addressing climate change when it comes to determining bottom lines, to what extent the notion of shareholders' value attached to business should take into account environment. In many ways, when you bring in the ethical and the mainstreaming dimensions of environmental studies, it becomes even more interesting and important for universities to assume a role. The third aspect I strongly believe is that universities should begin to work with other actors and other stakeholders in the field of environment. This could include non-governmental organizations, intergovernmental organizations, think tanks, research institutions, government bodies, both organizing seminars and lectures and workshops, but also constantly working towards building awareness. The heart of the challenge that we are facing is how do we, create environmentally conscious and socially responsible young individuals and citizens who can ultimately contribute towards building a sustainable society. The fourth aspect of environmental, the role of the university is when it comes to rigorous research leading to policy awareness and also a more nuanced approach towards addressing climate change, in which we should focus on speaking truth to power. And one of the things that universities are best at doing is to, transcend beyond the cacophony of, at times misplaced activism that might assume any discourse, including environmental discourse, to be able to ensure that the discussions and debates and even knowledge and understanding is based upon facts and also based upon scientific impetus that should drive that research as well. And that's, I think, very critical for the role of the university. And lastly, I believe very strongly that it's a continuing role that the university is. Internally, university should assume a leadership role in how they can contribute towards developing green campuses when it comes to sustainability and use of its own resources, what kind of natural ecosystem that the university can create, to what extent universities can build campus environments which are conscious of the environmental consciousness that we need to create within the university system. When you have those spaces which are themselves contributing to it, it becomes an inspiring ecosystem for students to imbibe those values that can ultimately contribute towards sustainability.
Thank you. What would you say? What role does climate change and sustainability play for aspiring students in terms of them choosing their subjects, as well as how does that affect? Well, you already talked about that. You've created different interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary studies, but how does this affect your curriculum?
So there are, of course, inspiring youth icons, including Greta Thunberg, for example, who have in many ways contributed towards creating consciousness, discussions surrounding climate change, and fortunately has found a place in regular conversations among young people. Now, I also believe that while looking for higher study options, students are increasingly aware and are conscious of the scope of sustainability education options available in a particular university. The options are now being weighed not just on the scales of quality education and excellence in faculty, but also in vocational opportunities, internship, fieldwork, experiential learning, and the university becomes a laboratory for them to pursue these opportunities. We at O.P. Jindal Global University have specifically included environmental courses in all the schools across the university, with faculty members specializing in various cross-disciplinary research with environment in areas of expertise, in addition to having a dedicated school on environmental sustainability with the option of cross-registered electives open to all students, regardless of which school or program that a student is. Our Office of the Career Services also actively provides opportunities to work in the sustainability and environmental sectors. We're also in the process of making environmental efforts even more globally engaged in the coming weeks. For example, we've built partnerships with universities around the world on specifically on aspects of environment and climate change. We're also promoting the exchange of thought and leadership. On the 5th of June, which is the World Environment Day, we are organizing a major conference that will bring together environmental thought leaders from India and beyond. Such is the level of consciousness that are being promoted both within the campus and outside.
Yeah, wonderful. I think just to follow up, you've already brought it in your response before, but just so we have it in a condensed sense, what would you say? Where do universities have an, or where can universities have an impact on broader society? So not only speaking of between universities, but also locally in India to promote sustainability.
Yeah. Well, listen, this is one of the areas where universities need to work harder because to a large extent, because of the nature of how universities work and what happens within a university, they tend to be isolated from societies to a large extent. And that's something which universities need to work on. I strongly believe that the clinical educational opportunities, this social innovation projects, the experiential learning opportunities that we create for our students, and even capstone projects that our students end up doing during the summer and winter and sometimes during the semester, all these things have the potential to impact on the broader society. I think it's also equally important to mention that universities engaging with society should not be only limited to having scholarly discussions, but also to look at contemporary issues that might affect and impact the environment, but may not necessarily, we may not have research, findings or research, outcomes that can respond to it. And at many levels, for example, air pollution. Now, one of the best ways to engage with people in a more direct and impactful manner is to pick up issues that are affecting and impacting them on a day-to-day lives. For some people, the issue of climate change may seem far-fetched, but they definitely can relate to and understand the issue of pollution, and that's one way to address it.
Yeah, that's a wonderful anecdote. What would you say, especially since you're a private university, what would you say are the main differences in that regard between the private and the state of funded universities?
Well, frankly speaking, the issue of environment and climate change and sustainability should not have any distinction when it comes to the nature of the university, whether it is public or private. In fact, if at all anything, the private universities, I believe, have a larger role to play, both in terms of its resources, its ability to innovate and to engage with students, and also to be adaptive about its governance, as well as its ability to understand what's happening in the world and actually end up changing and evolving. So to that extent, I believe private universities are better suited to provide leadership. But one of the things that we need to be conscious of is that once we remove the barriers between a public and a private university in this field, both set of institutions should have access to resources when it comes to creating, engaging in research relating to environment and climate change. We simply cannot afford to, make research relating to environment and climate change exclusively led by private universities, public universities, or for that matter, STEM-based disciplines. In fact, we are an entirely non-STEM, non-medicine university. We look at environmental issues and issues related to climate change sustainability from a different lens, as opposed to, let's say, environmental engineers and scientists who work in the field of environment. I strongly believe that both those perspectives are needed, and in many ways, the perspective that is brought to bear from the standpoint of business and finance and law and policy and and humanities more broadly will actually shape the future of how we can address this issue better. So we have to break these barriers, be it the public or the private, when it comes to addressing issues relating to environment.
Great, thank you. I'll go one more question concerning our times that we spoke about right now with the corona pandemic going on, especially India's had a hard few weeks lying behind you. And what is the impact of the pandemic for the higher education in India right now?
Well, it's a very, very unfortunate in so many ways. The pandemic has, indeed disrupted the classical models of classroom education globally, and India is no exception. But one of the things that is quite remarkable, and I must say that we are somewhat privileged, the pace at which we, and I'm sure several institutions across the country and around the world, have adapted to this new challenge, and to have a situation where the academic calendar, including the courses and programs and the entire continuity of the learning and education process has simply not been disrupted, and it has maintained that continuity, although one could argue about issues relating to Zoom exhaustion and the lack of experiential learning opportunities, peer learning opportunities, face-to-face exchanges, and the campus ecosystem. We are a fully residential university campus, and there's something to be said about people living and doing things together in a campus environment. All of that has simply not happened. But I do believe that we have learned a lot from this pandemic, and one of the things is also about adaptability to the situation and quickly respond to the challenge. But my heart goes out to millions of young people across India, but also many parts of the developing world in particular, who were simply deprived of the opportunity to be educated. As I said before, our university is privileged. We didn't interrupt our learning at all, but that could not be the case with a lot of people if they didn't have, let's say, internet access or uninterrupted electricity or not having an equipment. All those things are significant challenges. So in many ways, the pandemic has possibly and maybe clearly created greater degree of inequalities. The deeply divided inequalities that are prevailing in society has become sharper, and a lot of people were simply kept out of the learning ecosystem, because if they don't go to a physical school or a college or a university, there is simply no learning that is going to happen. Of course, the young people are also facing a lot of issues relating to mental health. All those things have been part of the challenge, and we need to address that. I can only hope that with the role of education and research has once again provided a solution to the problem that we have been facing. The fact that we could create a vaccine through the work of researchers, through the foundations of knowledge and education that scientists and researchers leading from the University of Oxford, but also others, have contributed to the fact that we are able to move beyond the crisis of the pandemic. And I hope that we value this experience and learn from the experience and end up being better prepared for future risks and vulnerability, including the risks that are posed due to climate change.
Wonderful. Thank you. Last question, especially now, of course, we're here at the GUC. So I would be interested in just asking you where you see the GUC, or where you see the GUC as a panel being able to support these activities of universities, of broader societies, and where can that panel support or promote sustainability?
Well, the GUC is a fantastic initiative. It reflects a great sense of vision when it comes to bringing together university leaders. It's an initiative. I want to compliment and congratulate the German Rectors Conference, the Körber Foundation, and the Universität Hamburg for essentially creating a unique organizational structure which paves way for a dialogue among university leaders about the big challenges of our time and to what extent national education systems around the world are confronted with. And unlike many international conferences and initiatives, the GUC becomes an opportunity for university leaders to interact and engage and seek transformative change for the future. The kind of issues that we have picked up in the last few years reflect the vision and the imagination of GUC. And I can only hope that this will also now provide opportunities for the GUC members to come together in terms of research, in terms of opportunities for students, in terms of joint curriculum and other types of initiatives that can be the next set of opportunities that GUC can provide.
Thank you so much. That was Professor Kumar from the O.P. Jindal Global University. And we're very happy, as I said before, to have you here once again. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the opportunity. And I wish you guys lots of fun and a very productive dialogue.
Hey, thank you very much. And I'm so sorry that I haven't asked your name when we started off.
Don't worry, don't worry.
What's your name?
My name's Patrick.
Patrick. Thank you very much, Patrick. Such a pleasure meeting you. And thank you for this fantastic interview.
Sure. Have a great day. Thank you.